Forget the marble. Forget the statues. If you stepped into an ancient city, the first thing to hit you would be the smell. Bread baking before sunrise, smoke from cooking fires, donkeys sweating in narrow streets, fish sauce fermenting in the sun, fresh herbs, rotten scraps, hot oil, wet wool, public toilets, animal dung under your sandals, perfume on the rich, incense in the temples, and somewhere beneath it all, sewage, moving slowly through the dark. Ancient cities did not smell like one thing. They smelled like everything happening inside them, all at once. To us, history often looks clean. White stone, empty ruins, silent streets. But the real ancient city was alive, crowded, smoky, damp, and intensely human. Every neighborhood had its own scent. Near the market, the air might be sharp with fish, fruit, spices, sweat, and spoiled food. Near the temples, it could be sweet with incense, flowers, oil, and burnt offerings. Near the workshops, it might smell of leather, dye, smoke, metal, wet cloth, or urine. And near the drains and cesspits, the city reminded you exactly how many people lived there. An ancient city was not just something you saw, it was something you breathed. So to understand what these cities really smelled like, we have to begin where the day began. In the smoke, the bread, the animals, and the streets.
Before the city smelled of politics, markets, temples, or death, it smelled of mourning. Fire, grain, smoke, animals, people waking up. In homes and bakeries, fires were lit before sunrise. Grain was ground by hand. Bread went into clay ovens. Porridge, beans, onions, and stews began to simmer. The air filled with smoke. Not just a background smell, but one of the basic scents of urban life. And then came the animals. Ancient cities ran on muscle. Human muscle, yes, but also donkeys, mules, horses, oxen, goats, pigs, dogs, and birds and dogs. They pulled carts, carried grain, supplied milk, meat, wool, leather, and transport. They were not parked outside the city. They were inside it. Which meant their smell was inside it too. Sweat, hide, manure, mud, straw. Dung gathered in streets, courtyards, stables, and alleys. But in the ancient world, waste was rarely only waste. In places where wood was scarce, dried animal dung could become fuel, burned for cooking, heating, and daily survival. So by the time the streets filled with traders, the city already had a morning smell. Smoke in the air, bread in the ovens, animals in the streets, and the day's first layer of filth underfoot. Then the market opened, and the smell became overwhelming.
The ancient market was not a quiet place. It shouted at you, and it smelled at you. Fresh bread, crushed herbs, olive oil, wine, fruit, sweat, dust, fish, blood, smoke, flies. Everything was close together. Everything was exposed to the air. One stall might smell sweet with figs, grapes, dates, and flowers. The next might be sharp with onions, garlic, salted fish, or fresh meat. Nearby, scraps were already beginning to turn. Without modern refrigeration, freshness had a time limit. A hot day could change the smell of a market very quickly. And then there was garum, Rome's famous fermented fish sauce. To modern ears, it sounds horrifying. Fish, salt, sun, and thyme. But to many Romans, garum was not garbage. It was flavor. It was trade. It was money in a jar. Fish was packed with salt and left to ferment, creating a powerful sauce that could be shipped across the empire in clay amphorae. So the market smelled like appetite and decay at the same time. It was where the city fed itself and where the evidence was impossible to hide. The ripe, the rotten, the expensive, the ordinary, the delicious, the spoiled, all of it passed through here. If you wanted to know what an ancient city consumed, you followed your nose. But the strongest smells were not always in the open. Some of them were hidden beneath the city itself.
Beneath the streets, there was another city, a darker one. A city of drains, pits, channels, buckets, and things people preferred not to think about. We remember Roman sewers as wonders of engineering,
and some of them were, but they were not the same as modern sewage systems. Many ancient drains were designed mainly to move water, rainwater, bathwater, overflow from streets and buildings. Human waste was often handled much more directly. Toilets might empty into cesspits below houses, courtyards, or shops, and those cesspits did not empty themselves. At some point, someone had to clean them, carry the contents away, and return the city to something like normal. This is one of the strange truths of ancient urban life. Waste was not always useless. What smelled disgusting in one place could be valuable somewhere else. Human waste could become fertilizer, animal dung could become fuel, and urine, perhaps the most surprising of all, could become part of the laundry business. In Roman cities, professional cleaners called fullers washed cloth in large vats. They used water, clay, and sometimes stale urine. As urine aged, it produced ammonia, which helped break down grease and dirt. Workers would tread the cloth with their feet, pressing and turning it in the mixture. Then the fabric was rinsed, treated, and dried. To us, it sounds revolting. To them, it was chemistry. So the ancient city survived by transforming its own filth. It drained it, collected it, sold it, burned it, washed with it. But that does not mean ancient people were careless about cleanliness. In fact, some cities built entire systems around water.
It is easy to imagine ancient people simply living with filth, but that is not true. Many ancient cities worked hard to control water, waste, and smell. They built drains, wells, bathing areas, fountains, channels that carried water through crowded streets. Thousands of years ago, in the Indus Valley city of Mohenjo-Daro, people lived among carefully planned streets, brick houses, wells, bathing spaces, and drainage systems. This was not a primitive accident. It was urban planning. A city designed in part to move water where it needed to go. The Romans too built cities around water. Aqueducts brought it in, fountains displayed it, baths turned it into a public ritual. A Roman bathhouse might smell of warm stone, steam, olive oil, sweat, damp towels, and scraped skin. Cleaner than the street, yes, but not clean in the way we mean it now. These places were crowded. Water was shared. Bodies were oiled, scraped, washed, and returned to the city outside. Ancient people understood cleanliness, but they lived without modern plumbing, disinfectants, refrigeration, or germ theory. So even the cleanest parts of the city still belonged to a world of smoke, sweat, dust, and bodies. But some smells were not just about survival. Some were chosen carefully, because in the ancient world, fragrance could mean holiness, beauty, and power. In the ancient world, beautiful smells were never just decoration. They were signals. A sweet smell could tell you that you were entering sacred space, that you were near wealth, near ritual, near people who had the money and power to control the air around them. Temples were not silent marble rooms. They were alive with smoke, oil, flowers, food, fire, and bodies. Incense burned before statues of the gods. Aromatic resins filled the air. Offerings were poured, carried, burned, and consumed. In some places, the smell of worship was sweet and smoky. In others, it could include blood, hot fat, and the heavy scent of animal sacrifice. But fragrance also belonged to the wealthy. The rich could scent their clothes, their hair, their rooms, and their gardens. In Egypt, perfume and incense were closely tied to purity, status, and the divine. A beautiful smell could suggest closeness to the gods. A bad smell could mark labor, poverty, decay, or exclusion. In Roman cities like Pompeii, gardens and perfume workshops remind us that urban life was not only sewage and smoke. It was also roses, violets, oils, herbs, and imported scents carried across long trade routes. So smell became part of the city's hierarchy. Some people worked in fish, leather, dye, dung, and sweat. Others surrounded themselves with flowers, oils, incense, and clean water. The ancient city did not smell the same to everyone. It depended on who you were and where you were allowed to stand. And beyond the markets, baths, temples, and homes, there was one final smell waiting at the edge of the city: death. And beyond the noise of the streets, Beyond the market stalls, the workshops, the bathhouses, and the temples, the smell of the city changed again. At the edge of many ancient cities, you entered the world of the dead. In the Roman world, tombs often stood outside the city gates, lining the roads that led in and out. So the smell of arrival could also be the smell of departure. Smoke from funeral pyres, ash, oil, flowers, burned offerings, the last traces of a body being transformed into memory. But death did not always smell only of decay. In places like ancient Egypt, the dead were surrounded with scent deliberately. Resins, oils, spices, incense, linen, and ritual substances were used to preserve the body and prepare it for another world. To us, perfume belongs to life, but in many ancient cultures, fragrance could follow you into death. By now, the ancient city no longer looks like a clean ruin. It feels more like a living body. It ate, it sweated, it smoked, it washed itself, it perfumed itself, it hid what it did not want to see, and eventually it buried and burned its dead. And not everyone experienced that body in the same way. A wealthy person could step into a shaded courtyard, wash at a fountain, burn incense, wear perfume, and sleep behind thick walls. But a fuller worked with wet cloth and urine. A fish seller stood beside salt, scales, and decay. A tanner handled hides. A stable worker breathed dung and animal sweat. A sewer cleaner carried away what the city wanted to forget. Smell was not just atmosphere, it was inequality in the air. This is why the question matters. What did ancient cities smell like is not really a question about stink. It is a question about daily life, about food, labor, worship, disease, money, status, beauty, and survival. The smells of the ancient city tell us what people cooked, what they feared, what they valued, what they threw away, and what they tried to make sacred. Because smell is intimate. You cannot observe it from a distance. You breathe it in. It enters the body. It makes history physical. Today, we walk through ancient ruins in silence. Stone streets, broken walls, empty temples. But once, these places were full of breath. Bread in the ovens, smoke in the alleys, animals in the streets, incense before the gods, perfume on the powerful, sewage beneath the stones, and death waiting beyond the gates. To smell an ancient city was to know its secrets. Who cooked, who labored, who worshipped, who ruled, and who had the power to escape the stink.